Collaborative problem solving is an approach that I use with most of the families that I work with in therapy. Because it can take a little while to explain, I thought I'd make a presentation here so that my clients can view it before we practice this in session, so that they can have a chance to understand the philosophical underpinnings behind how this works and can come to session with any questions they might have. The basic philosophy of this approach is that kids do well if they can, and with our help, they can do better. This is a very positive and strength-based approach for families and children, and it can provide a lot of hope for families that have been struggling. A quick background. This was developed by Dr. Stuart Ablon and Dr. Ross Green, both of whom worked with families that have children with explosive anger disorders. The model has now been widely adapted for children of all ages, for schools, for couples, and for businesses, and even mediation processes. Most families who come in for therapy have been trying really hard for a really long time, using all the techniques and strategies that conventional wisdom tells us should work. So, what has conventional wisdom been getting wrong for these families? Mostly, it's that behavior problems can be tracked to poor parenting. Maybe it's a lack of consistency or simply not finding the child's currency with which to motivate them. Good behavior is all about parents figuring out how to get their kids to obey, is what we're told. We see our kids being able to behave well in some circumstances, so you know it's not that they can't behave themselves. So it must be that maybe they're doing it on purpose. They're using these behaviors to manipulate us into getting what they want. If they really wanted to behave well, they could. So as parents, we just have to figure out how to make them want to obey. In psychological terms, this means parents need to figure out how to motivate compliant behavior through operant conditioning. What is operant conditioning? 2 words: rewards and punishments. We must motivate compliant behavior through intensive, consistent programs of rewards, punishments, and ignoring. This looks like positive reinforcement for desirable behavior, praising them when they make the right choice. It can look like sticker charts and point systems and earning privileges. It also means timeouts and losing privileges when children misbehave. It means taking away toys or taking away the car keys. It means grounding and restricting access to devices or activities. Does all of this sound familiar? Does it sound exhausting? There's a big problem with the conventional wisdom. It implies that if a child is not behaving, it must be because he's lazy, he's unmotivated, he doesn't care, or he isn't trying. The problem is that if this is how we consistently treat our kids, soon enough they'll start acting lazy, unmotivated, uncaring, and they'll quit trying hard. Or even worse, that they'll start believing that they're lazy, unmotivated, that they don't care, and that they can't try hard. The fact is, all our sticker charts, timeouts, taking away privileges, awarding and taking away points aren't working well. Why? Well, because every time we use these strategies and they don't work, this is the message that our children are receiving. This is a note that was written by a child Dr. Ablon was working with as he was developing this model. My brain is idiotic. I make stupid mistakes. I mess everything up. I always make a mess and get hurt and ruin everything. Is this what we're trying to convince our children is true? Is this the message we want our children to internalize? The problem is that with every reward and punishment that we use, we're sending this message, at least in part. Collaborative problem solving takes a different view on kids' challenging behaviors. These children don't lack the will, they lack the skill. So what are these skills that are necessary for good behavior? Flexibility and adaptability. The ability to change or be changed to fit changed circumstances. This means being able to roll with the punches of life. When your child can't find their favorite shoes, their life doesn't have to fall apart. When screen time is up, they can think of other fun activities to do. Flexible thinking means you can shift to something else without getting fixated on the one thing that you wanted but can't have. Frustration tolerance is another skill children have a hard time developing. This means being able to cope when things don't go your way. When you miss that shot in the basketball game, you don't fall apart or punch the ref. When you lose at sorry, you don't flip the game board over or sulk in your bedroom for the rest of the day. And then the third is problem solving. That's the ability to look at a situation and figure out how to solve the problem, whether that's persevering in a long division problem in homework or dealing with complicated friend situations. Can you look at a situation with a problem-solving state of mind? We'd all like our children to have these skills, so why don't they? Sometimes it's simply lack of development. Either your child has not yet developed emotionally and cognitively to the point where they can do these things, or maybe it's that they've moved into a developmental stage where they need more independence and autonomy, and we as parents just haven't quite kept up with that. Personality factors are also huge. Any parent with more than one child knows that they just come with the personality that they have. And some personalities, honestly, make behaving a little easier than others. Some kids are just born compliant and easy-natured. Other kids, not so much. Unresolved trauma in a child's past can also make these skills impossibly difficult. Chronic stress affects brain development as well, whether that's from, a parent's getting divorced or major disruptions like a move or even the birth of a younger sibling. Genetic, epigenetic factors can also play a part. Sometimes all we need to do is take a look in the mirror to see why our child struggles with their temper. Environmental factors, family factors, school factors, social factors, all of these can play a role in how our children do or do not learn these skills. Every child is different. Is it nature? Is it nurture? It's both. Let's talk a little bit about what happens when our children don't have these skills that they need. Emotional outbursts. These occur when the cognitive demands placed on the child outstrip his capacity to respond adaptively. The child is out of his depth and really doesn't have the resources to handle the situation, no matter how hard they might try. Here's a question to really consider. Who are the children who aren't trying hard to behave well? Well-behaved kids. These are the kids that have that magic combination of personality and inclination that make compliant behavior easy. They can behave well without trying. So what makes it so hard for other kids? I like to use this hand model of the brain with virtually every client I work with, no matter what age. This is how it works. Hold your fist palm forward with your thumb tucked under your fingers. This makes a pretty good model of your brain. The wrist is your spinal cord and the base of your hand is the brain stem. These are the parts of your brain responsible for basic functioning, keeping you breathing, your heart pumping, your blood pressure adequate for the demands of your body. Your thumb is tucked into the center, and this is the limbic system. This is the emotional center of the brain where your fight, flight, and freeze response lives. This is where dopamine is released and addictive processes live. This is where our caveman impulses and instincts are located. And the back of your hand and your fingers curled over the top represent your cerebral cortex. This is where the thinking part of our brain lives, especially the fingers curled over the top, the part of our brain right behind our foreheads. This is our prefrontal cortex where we can think and reason and plan, where we understand choices and consequences. When everything is working properly, all these different parts of the brain are integrated, connected, and communicating. Our emotions can influence our thoughts can influence our emotions, and our bodies can stay regulated. But sometimes too much information comes in for the upper brain to process. Maybe this is a situation where there is way too much stimulation, or where our emotions are just really triggered, or a new situation comes up and we don't know how to deal with it. However it happens, we flip our lids. This looks like emotional meltdown, whether it's rage or sobbing hysterics or even just shutting down completely. When we flip our lids, this is like our fingers flipping up. Our thinking brain gets disconnected and our limbic system takes control. In brain scans, we can literally see how the thinking parts of our brain go dark when our emotions take over. Unfortunately, this is the point where many parents are trying to talk and reason with their kid, but their kid's thinking brain is turned off. And the more we talk, the more overwhelmed they are. And then we start getting overwhelmed, and pretty soon we have two flipped lids freaking out all over the place. This doesn't work. No problems can possibly get solved when things reach this point. So let's take a look at these problems. Unsolved problems happen when a child's lagging skills make it difficult to respond adaptively to specific demands or expectations. Every challenging behavior involves a lagging skill bumping up against a situation that demands that skill. Here are some examples. Maybe some of these are familiar to you and you're dealing with them now or have in the past. Getting out of bed in the morning, turning off the device when screen time is over, leaving the park when it's time to go home for dinner, starting homework after school, practicing a particularly hard passage during piano practice. Every parent of a child taking piano lessons has probably been through this particular misery. Maybe it's getting ready for bed when a child is happily playing. If you have older kids, maybe it's when they want to have access to social media that you are not sure is appropriate for them. Or they want the keys to the car when they haven't finished their chores. Or maybe they want to play a video game that, again, you don't think is appropriate. All of these and countless others are unsolved problems. One thing to note, unsolved problems are not the same as bad behavior. The behavior is not the problem to be solved. The behavior is what happens when a child can't deal with this unsolved problem. This matters a lot as we get into a better approach to discipline. The root of the word discipline is discipulus, meaning a pupil, student, or follower, like a disciple. Discipline means to teach skills, not lessons. We aren't trying to condition our children to train them like rats or dogs. What we like to do is to teach them the skills they need to be happy, productive adults. So what are these skills that our children who struggle with challenging behaviors lacking? First, emotion and self-regulation. This means thinking and communicating calmly while upset and controlling their impulses. Second, cognitive flexibility. This means generating multiple solutions to a problem, moving off an idea that's not working and trying something else. Third, language and communication. Following and engaging in conversation, telling people what's bothering them, using their words as we like to tell our toddlers. Fourth, social thinking. Taking another person's perspective into account, understanding how others are perceiving them, having empathy for others. And finally, number 5, attention and working memory. This means holding two concerns in mind at once, thinking through the likely consequences of various options, and maintaining attention long enough to work things out. Do these sound like some of the skills your child might be struggling with? Or maybe you yourself? There's a great assessment of these lagging skills called the ALSUP, Assessment of Lagging Skills and Unsolved Problems, which can help identify exactly which of these skills your child needs help with the most. I can help you with this assessment. Your child's teacher at school can help. The point is that we know what these skills are. Is there a way of disciplining our children so that they can learn and practice these skills? Let's look at the options that parents have. In this model, we call them Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C. We'll look at Plan A first. Plan A is what most parents have been trying to do with varying levels of success. This is a plan that is primarily concerned with the adult's interests. It can be harsh and punitive, spanking, shouting, or it can be calm and polite, timeouts and sticker charts. But if it doesn't address the child's concern, it is Plan A. So what happens when adults use Plan A on children with these lagging skills? Well, it tends to set kids off. It initiates power struggles. It doesn't build skills, but instead creates more conflict in the relationship. If Plan A was working well for you, you probably wouldn't be watching this presentation. It primarily operates from a perspective of power and control. Now, sometimes Plan A is the right choice. Plan A works very well with little children who do not have the ability to reason. Sticker charts can work beautifully for potty training and brushing teeth. Sometimes also there are clear safety issues and the parent needs to exercise their power and control to keep the child from getting hurt or killed. Sometimes behavior is so important it's worth creating a meltdown to enforce. For example, it is not okay to pour dish detergent in the fishbowl. The important thing to remember is that for Plan A to work, a child must be capable of behaving in the required way, or you, as the adult, must have the full ability to physically control your child if necessary. This only works up to a certain point. If you have a 13-year-old, it's going to become increasingly difficult to physically control your child. One thing to make note, Plan A is not asking or telling a child to do something. That is simply setting an expectation, and parents are allowed to do this. You can tell a child when it's time for bed, when they need to get off the iPad, that they need to do chores around the house. This is not Plan A. Plan A is what too many parents resort to when these requests or requirements become an unsolved problem. Moving on to Plan C. We will talk about Plan B in just a minute. If Plan A only takes the parent's interests into account, Plan C only takes the child's. This is when you decide to drop the issue, deciding this is not the hill for you to die on. As parents, we know we have to pick our battles, and maybe this is a battle for another day. It's also appropriate for behaviors that are rightfully the child's responsibility. After a certain age, this includes what they eat, what they wear, and how they keep their room organized or disorganized, as the case may be. It can be hard for parents to relinquish control over some of these areas of a child's life, but it needs to happen at some point. Plan C is the right choice when it is chosen proactively to remove an expectation. When you decide to work on other higher priority problems first, or sometimes when the expectation is just not that important to you and it's causing lots of challenging behaviors, it's also a good time to use Plan C. For example, sure, it would be nice if your child would put on pajamas for bed like a civilized person instead of sleeping in their clothes like a heathen, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not worth a tantrum. I'm speaking from personal experience here. Or maybe you really don't approve of the music your teen is listening to, but right now there are other more important problems to solve, so you let that one go, even if it is just for a while. It's important to note that Plan C is not giving in. If you're giving in to your child, that is failed Plan A. Plan C is dropping an expectation on purpose, strategically, for now. Okay, so what is Plan B? Plan B is solving the problem collaboratively, addressing the concerns of both the parent and the child. This is not the average of Plan A and Plan C. Plan B is accomplished in 3 steps. Number 1, empathize with the child. Number 2, share the adult's concern. And number 3, collaborate to generate possible solutions and then choosing when to try. Let's look at step 1 first. The goal is to achieve the clearest possible understanding of your child's perspective. You want to start the conversation with a neutral observation about the problem. We'll talk about this a little bit more in a minute. Then you're going to use information gathering and reflecting and regulating tools to really get inside your child's head. You want to understand at a deep level what your child's experience and perspective is, to the point where it makes sense to you. You don't have to agree, but you need to understand why your child's behavior makes sense to them. And you need to accurately reflect this back to him so he knows he is heard and understood 100%. It's only when your child feels fully heard and understood that he'll be able to open his mind and heart to your perspective. So when you've done that properly, the next step, step 2, is to share your concern. Be specific but brief. Most parents use about 5 times more words than what they really need to use, and they end up sounding like the adults in Charlie Brown. Wah, 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 wah. Start with and, not but. So this might sound like, your perspective makes sense to me. Thank you so much for telling me and helping me understand. And now here's my point of view. So during this process, if your child gets upset, you can always move back to step 1. Remember that if they flip their lid, the game is up. So if they're starting to get upset, watch your words, make sure you're not blaming him, and then go back to your step 1 and reflect back to him that you totally get his position. Or explore to see if there's more that maybe he didn't tell you. For you as a parent, make sure that you're listening to your words from the ears of your child. Be as transparent as you can and help them understand. Come from a place of love and vulnerability, not from a place of knowing everything. Ask your child if what you're saying makes sense. Tell them it's okay if they don't agree. You just want them to understand what's going on in your head. When both sets of concerns are on the table and everyone is calm, you can move on to step 3, which is to collaborate and choose. Again, you want to frame the problem in neutral terms. Consider all the potential possible solutions to this, and then choose one that addresses both sets of concerns, is realistic, and won't actually cause additional problems. Okay, so let's get down to the nitty-gritty. How do we actually do this? First, it matters a lot how you set up these conversations. Be as neutral and non-blaming as possible. So this will look like, I've noticed that it's pretty tough for you to turn off the iPad when your screen time is up. What's up? Or, I've noticed that you've been having a rough time when your game doesn't go the way you wanted it to. Can you tell me about what's going on with you? This is not the time to say, I've noticed you can't handle it when I tell you it's time for bed and you throw a great big screaming fit like a baby. What's up? So you need to think hard about how to word this part of the ask so that you don't trigger defensiveness in your child. When you've done this, then it's time to drill down for more information. As I described before, you are a detective here, uncovering every stone. So this is going to involve reflective listening, clarifying questions, gathering information relating to the who, what, where, and when of the unsolved problem, and asking the child what they're thinking in the midst of the unsolved problems and why the problem occurs under some conditions and not others. So, as you're discussing this with your child, if you're not sure what to say next, or you need more information, just ask them for it. You can say, how so? Or, I'm confused. I don't quite understand this part. Can you tell me more about that? Or sometimes, let me think about that for a second. Sometimes a child doesn't talk, or they say, I don't know. So in those cases, you can try to figure out why. Maybe the problem wasn't free of challenging behavior. So when you set up the problem, when you said, I've noticed, maybe you're stating that in a way that you're including some blaming languages, or you're including problem behavior rather than the actual problem. You're saying, I've noticed that you're screaming when you're doing this. That's not a great way to set up this problem. Sometimes you weren't specific enough. Sometimes you can combine 2 or 3 problems rather than just specifying one. Maybe you're using emergency plan B instead of proactive plan B. So what this means is that you don't want to have this conversation right in the middle of the confrontation. So when your child is currently refusing to go to bed, this is not the time to have this conversation. You need to have this conversation at a time where you've pre-planned it. Your child is calm, you're calm, they've had enough to eat, you have enough time. So that's called proactive plan B. Sometimes you have to do emergency plan B, but hopefully most of the time you don't. Sometimes you're actually using plan A. You think you're doing plan B, but you're really doing plan A. You might be going through the steps, but the child honestly can tell that you have your own agenda. Maybe he really doesn't know. In that case, it's perfectly okay to say, you know what, let me take a guess. Maybe you might be feeling this. And then you can go into what you're guessing that the child is feeling or thinking during these times, and maybe you're right. And then he can say, yeah, that's it. Or maybe you're not. And then he can explain where you're wrong. Sometimes he just needs more time to think, and that's okay too. So during this empathy step, what you need to be thinking is, what do I not yet understand about the child's concern or perspective? What doesn't make sense to me? What do I need to ask to understand it better? So don't skip this step. Don't assume you already know what the kid's concern is and treat the empathy step as if it is just a formality or checkbox. Don't rush through it. And don't leave this step before you completely understand the kid's perspective and concern. And don't talk about solutions yet. That will be saved till the last step. So you know you're done when you can reflect back to your child and you can say, have I got that right? And he agrees. Until you get that point, keep working at it. Okay, so moving on to your part, step number 2. Remember, you're saying and, not but. You just want your child to have a peek into your heart. Remember also that most adult concerns fall into one of 2 categories: how the problem is affecting the kid and how the problem is affecting others. This might sound like, something I worry a lot about when you don't get your homework done is that you're not going to learn what you need so that you can succeed in high school or college. Or I worry a lot when angry words are said to your brother, that he's going to feel like you really don't love him. So notice how I said, I worry a lot when angry words are said. So this is a way that you can talk about the situation in a non-blaming way. This is also a time for you to really think about if your concern is a valid one. Sometimes as parents, we think things need to be done just because that's how everybody does it. And maybe this is a time for you to think about whether it really does need to be done like that. Because I said so is not a good reason. That's not gonna cut it when it comes to really laying your concerns out. So this is where deliberate parenting kicks in, where you can look at those things that you're asking your child to do, making sure that you have really good reasons for them and that you can communicate those reasons to your child. Don't be afraid, again, to be vulnerable. So you can talk about how, especially if you have your older child, if you have an older child, you can talk about how you're so afraid that you're going to lose connection with them. You're so afraid that they are not going to want to be a part of your life anymore. You're so afraid that you're not going to be able to protect them from the things that might hurt them in their life, and that there's nothing that terrifies you more. So when you're in this part of the plan, make sure that this is what you ought to be thinking. Have I been clear about my concern? Does my child understand what I've said? And again, it's okay if the child doesn't agree with you. You can tell them, it's okay if you don't agree. I just need you to know it's in my heart. Again, don't start talking about solutions yet. Do not sermonize. Don't judge. Don't lecture. Don't use sarcasm. We really want our children to connect with us and to empathize with us. This is what we're trying to teach them. Think about those skills we're trying to teach. And then the last step, which is inviting them to collaborate with you as you come up with solutions. So you're going to brainstorm solutions that are realistic, meaning that both parties can do what they are agreeing to, and mutually satisfactory, meaning that the solution truly addresses the concerns of both of you. So a nice way to start this is to restate the concerns that were identified in the first two steps, saying, I wonder if there is a way that both of us can get our needs met. If you can have enough time in the afternoon to play, and you can also get your homework done. Let's see. Again, you want to stick as closely to the concerns that were identified in the first two steps. Also, while it's a good idea to give the kid the first opportunity to propose a solution, generating solutions is going to be a team effort. So definitely give them the first crack, but it's not just going to be them. You're also going to be giving your own solutions. It's a good idea to consider the odds of a given solution actually working. If you think it's below 60 or 70%, think about what's making you skeptical and then talk about it. Like, this is a time for you really to talk through these solutions. Does it address your concern and his concern? Is it something you're likely to do and can do? Sometimes if the child is having a hard time thinking of solutions, you can be kind of silly or give sort of a fantastical solution. So this might sound like, I know what, you can come with me to Walmart and we will find the magic wand aisle and we will find the very best magic wand they have. We can come home and we can wave it and then this problem will be solved. Hopefully that can get them laughing a little bit. And also you should write these down. Write down every idea, whether it's a silly one, serious one, whatever. This shows your child that you are taking them seriously. And then when it comes to actually looking at these and analyzing them and choosing one, then you have something to refer to. So what you're thinking during this step: have I summarized both concerns accurately? Have we truly considered whether both parties can do what they've agreed to? Does the solution truly address the concerns of both parties? What's my estimate of the odds of this solution working? Don't rush through this step. Don't enter this step with your preordained ingenious solutions that your child is going to see through right away, knowing that, oh, this whole thing was just actually an act, and what you really want is to impose plan A. And then, don't sign off on solutions that both parties can't realistically perform. You know yourself, you know your child. And if they also don't truly address the concerns of both parties, they just aren't going to be sustainable. So the other thing to remember is that you can choose this solution and then try it out. See how it works. Say, we're going to give this a go for a week or 3 days or whatever, probably more than a day, because sometimes it takes a while for things to really kick in. And if it doesn't work, you can go back and you can try a different solution. This is one of the reasons why writing these things down is a good idea. So, why does this process work? First of all, it does work. There's a lot of research showing that this process works really well, even for the most challenging of kids. So the reason why it works is because this Plan B strengthens the very cognitive processes the child struggles with. So the reason why they're having these problems is because they are lacking these skills. And through this process, you are helping them develop those very skills. So it's solving the problem and is also making it less likely for children to experience unsolved problems in the future, because you're teaching them and you're practicing in this process those skills that the child most needs. We can also go back to the hand model of the brain, and we can think about cognitively what's happening inside the brain. As you're going through this process, you are helping to regulate your child. That's those lower brain areas. As you are empathetic, as you are reflectively listening to them, sharing eye contact, having a very calm presence, as they're getting upset, as you help them to calm back down. This is that regulation step that happens in the lower parts of the brain. The limbic system, this is the emotional relating part of your brain. And this is where you can really help your children to develop feelings, to recognize their own feelings, to recognize you also have feelings, and to relate to themselves and to you. This is the empathetic part. This is where you're empathizing with them, they empathize with you. And then when you're actually coming up with solutions to the problem and you're able to reason and talk things through, this is the reasoning part. This is activating the reasoning, the upper cortex part of your brain. So you can see that this process really integrates all these areas of your brain, and it follows the iron rule of whenever you're working with children, honestly with anybody, is to first regulate, then relate, then reason. If you aren't regulated, if you aren't in relationship, then any reasoning that you're doing with your child is just not going to work. So let's compare Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C. Let's look at the various goals. So first goal might be trying to get the expectation met. So this means getting the homework done. Does Plan A get the homework done? Well, if you're succeeding with Plan A, yes, it does. Plan B, yes, because you found a solution that can meet both of your needs. Plan C, no, that's when you've decided that you're going to drop that expectation at all. Next goal, to reduce challenging behavior. Does Plan A work sustainably? Well, not all the time. Otherwise, again, you wouldn't be watching this presentation. Not often enough, and not at the times when you need it to work. Does Plan B reduce challenging behavior? Yes, it does. It does, because the child is going to get their needs met. You're going to get your needs met. And if it doesn't work, again, part of the process is going back and problem solving again so that it works. Plan C, does it reduce challenging behavior? This means, again, like lessening the screaming and crying and tantrums and all of that. Yeah, because again, you're not expecting your child to do anything. Building skills. Does Plan A build skills? It doesn't. Plan A is training your child like a rat or a dog. It doesn't build those skills that we talked about that are so necessary. Plan B is all about building skills. Plan C also does not build skills. Does it solve the problem durably? Plan A. No, not really. You keep having to make more sticker charts and you keep having to give timeouts. It's just not working in the long run. Plan B. Yes, it does. Again, it teaches the skills that the children need to have fewer of these problems in the future. Plan C, no. Does it build your relationship? Plan A. Not really. It doesn't have to be terrible for your relationship. Sometimes it is if you're resorting to a lot of screaming and yelling and spanking. But it doesn't build the relationship, because ultimately Plan A is exercising power and control over your child, and it's just not a way to build a relationship over time that's going to last. Plan B does that. It is all about working through the relationship to solve problems together. So let's take one more look at the lagging skills and how Plan B stacks up. Emotion and self-regulation. Does going through this process help a child to think and communicate calmly while upset? Yes, it does. Does it help them to control impulses? Absolutely. Cognitive flexibility. Does it generate multiple solutions to a problem? And does it help a child learn to move off an idea and try something else? Yes, that's the very heart and soul of this process. Language and communication. Does this help a child follow and engage in conversation and help them to express what's bothering them? Yes, it does. As you're helping him put words to the way that he's feeling, and he's listening to the words that you're putting to how you feel. Social thinking. Does this process help a child to consider another person's perspective? Does it help him understand how others perceive him? Does it encourage empathy? Definitely. And then attention and working memory. Does this process help a child hold two concerns in mind at once? Yes, it does. And sometimes it also both yours and his. And also, it will help him sometimes to realize he has more than one concern himself. And that can help him to hold both of those in mind at once and be able to work things through. It can help him think through the consequences of different options as you're looking at the different solutions you've generated, thinking which ones will work, which ones might not work, and why. And this process helps maintain attention because, again, this isn't just you talking and preaching and lecturing at him where he's just going to tune you out immediately. This is involving him every step of the way. So that's collaborative problem solving. If you'd like to learn more about this process, there's a couple of really great websites, thinkkids.org, and I think that's Dr. Ablon's website, and cpsconnection.com/cps. I believe that is Dr. Green's website. Hopefully I haven't got that wrong. There's a really good TED Talk by Dr. Ablon called Rethinking Challenging Kids, where there's a skill, there's a way. You can look that up on YouTube. There's another really great talk by Dr. Ablon, A Flawless Talk, Collaborative Problem Solving. In fact, I really just recommend doing a YouTube search for collaborative problem solving, and you'll find a bunch of talks. You can find webinars, you can find a series of lectures that are all really, really helpful. If you like to read or listen to audiobooks, The Explosive Child by Ross Greene, that's kind of the very first book written about this process. Treating Explosive Kids. There's some more recent books by Dr. Greene, Lost and Found, Unlocking Collaboration and Compassion to Help Our Most Vulnerable, Misunderstood Students. That's mostly about kids in school. Raising Human Beings, Creating a Collaborative Partnership with Your Child, also by Ross Greene. And then Changeable, How Collaborative Problem Solving Changes Lives at Home, at School, and at Work by Dr. Ablon. So if you'd like to get more information and learn more about this, those are resources I recommend. I really hope that this presentation has been helpful for you to kind of understand how this works. I hope it's inspired you. I hope it gives you some excitement and hope that things can get better. I am here for you when you have questions as you are working this out at home. One of the great benefits of coming to therapy is that you can try things at home and then you can troubleshoot when you meet with me every week, and you can talk about what worked, what didn't work. And you can also, if you need me to demonstrate how some of these things work or do role playing with you or your child, I'm there for you. So again, I hope this has been helpful, and thank you for listening.